Welcome to The Advocate, a program that thrashes out all the topical issues of the day.
When you are in government, you don't see nothing wrong with whatever is happening. The moment you are out there, everything is wrong.
You can't even see many women now, and when they're there, they're not even really making a mark, and then they have an NYSC problem and this and that.
One of the reasons why we don't have more women in politics in Nigeria is for as long as political meetings continue to take place in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
Really disastrous for a president
to even say
be unaware of the chief
It's
justice.
a ploy. It could be a strategy.
That strategy was very terrible strategy. Because the buck stops at your table.
Whether it's that we don't look after our cities, and quite frankly, Nigeria is becoming a very ugly place.
When you are the only one feeding the people with this news, and there is nobody countering them, it becomes, the news.
Welcome to The Advocate, where we lay out a banquet and invite you to feast. Chuka is intrigued by a choice of leaders and their questionable resumes, aren't we all? Emeka stopped short of issuing an edict, return our cultural artifacts, but are we ready to receive them? Ireti, topical as always, takes us down the Democracy Hall of Fame and gets us thinking, what does June 12th mean to us? Uche digs up an issue that some would clearly like buried, Zamfara, gold mining, and undeclared proceeds. I'll be opening the floor on a matter of social etiquette by saying, mind your language. That's the menu, let's tuck in. Increasingly, swearing or profanity is invading the public space. It's common to hear people using the F word and other variations in places of work, movies, even some meant for family viewing. And songs, well, profanity in songs, that isn't entirely new. Why the foul language? Is it that there is no other way to express ourselves? Is it a sign of being cool, of identifying with a defiant shock culture? Or are we generally less self-controlled? I had a bout of consciously swearing when at university. About the same time I tried to force myself to smoke cigarettes. I wanted to be cool. I was in the UK and it was the in thing at my university. Well, guess what? I've grown up and this is definitely not the UK. This causes me to wonder, is using profanity not another hangover of ostentatious behavior? Trying to identify with a foreign culture without assessing the innate value of this cultural import. Swearing in public is antisocial and inconsiderate. You or I may as well burp, foul the air, or even light a cigarette in a public place and expect everyone else to deal with it. The other regrettable culture, which could be said to be even worse than swearing, is our increasing habit of using God's name in vain. To be fair, this practice isn't entirely imported, but partially homegrown, fanned by misguided religiosity. Christians are adept at this. Almost everything is JC this or OMG that. There's an increasing carelessness with which we throw these expressions about, with little or no reverence. Little children as young as 2 have quickly adopted this culture, mistaking it for holiness. What about our massacre of the English language? It's now common to hear and read people mixing tenses, even in newspaper articles or high-profile speeches, to such an extent that even among the educated, it's more the norm to employ the wrong use of tenses than vice versa. This was once not the case. I put this down to ignorance and sloppy teaching. So to some extent, this third category are not as willful as the top 2. Nevertheless, we've become increasingly careless with our language, and this is not a good sign. Since like the company we keep, the way we speak affects the way we think and behave, or vice versa. It's not too late to turn things around, to clear the air of language pollution. It's not too late to mind our language.
You're taking me back to the argument last week about dress and performance.
Okay.
Yes, when you said close to the end about how we speak is how we, as it were, how we will eventually be thinking. So I think all these things are tied. A lot of things are cultural, and we don't understand that culture really does push things. So when last week I was saying something about dressing, I actually was quite serious about it, just as I believe now. I'm happy you brought up the language thing, because every time I bring up this language thing, some people will say, oh, we're not even British anyway, we're Nigerian. And I'm like, that's totally irrelevant. It's the language that has been chosen for us to communicate as a nation.
Okay, you're focusing
and with
on the
world.
tenses. That's the aspect
the bit to do with just bad English. Can't write letters anymore. You see emails sent to you and it's terrible. Everybody's just mixing things up and it doesn't seem to matter. And that's, I think, the education has a bit to do with it. I think we don't have good English teachers in secondary school, especially.
Even in primary. Even in primary.
No, but I mean, isn't secondary more impacting on you than primary? You can correct your
child from
primary.
0 to 7, and I'll show you the man. So.
I see. So
I think primary. Yeah, absolutely.
But if the secondary is bad, though, that is a real problem. Because, that's an age where...
I would like to come in. I mean, I think you've mixed 3 things, which I think actually stand for me separate, totally different. I'm very, very particular about language, and I think language matters. Language is important. Language is the first meeting of 2 strangers, etc., etc. So I want to separate that. I want to talk about, and I do believe this whole thing about swearing and about it being imported and the whole OMG. And OMG was actually created as a result of not wanting to use the Lord's name in vain.
Correct.
Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is swearing. Look, it's not imported, my dear. I'm sorry. I totally disagree with you. There are ways you can swear in Yoruba. Okay. If you can speak Igbo, you would know how to swear in Igbo. There are ways you can swear in Yoruba. There are ways you can swear in English. And that's what people do. It's just what they do. I smoke. Yes, I do. You okay? Yeah. I smoke. No, so it's not bad manners. I will smoke in my car. I do smoke in public. The only place I don't smoke is non-smoking areas. So no, I don't. I think I have excellent manners. I think I say my pleases, my thank you. Allow me to finish. No, I think because I swear it has no impact on my language. It has no impact on my articulacy. It has no impact on how I communicate. When I'm with my friends, we swear like, well, not we. Sometimes you swear, sometimes. I actually wanted to say, what the, when you finish, but I'll stop there.
No, you can't.
So that, no, exactly. I did that on purpose.
For obvious reasons.
And then they created a beautiful. So what I'm saying to you is that I'm not going to judge somebody. Incidentally, I think Nigerians don't swear very nicely, actually. They don't know how to use that.
Correct.
It's the style of
They don't know how to use the. It's an art. Thank you. It's an art. They don't know how to do it properly. Those of us who do it, we enjoy it. But what I'm trying to say is that I think it's not something that's been imported from abroad, because in Yoruba you have your swear words. In Igbo you have the equivalent, and therefore if you're an English-speaking person, you will have your English-speaking swear word. Now, is it right? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on who you're talking to.
Context.
Thank you. Context. That's the word I was looking for.
If I'm with my friends, so the social dynamics of our relationship, allows us to be that expressive, whether it be in English or in Igbo or in any language in which we express. So I think profanity means when you use it out of the context and where its use is not suitable for the context of the place or for the occasion. That's where it becomes profanity.
Correct.
But if that's how I see it. But on the other issue around the use of English as a language or the misuse, I for one think that it's because a lot of people do not place as much importance as we used to place in, for what English is as a medium of communication. So a lot of people think it's imported, therefore, for whatever it is, it's not my first language, so I wouldn't. And there's a general language of the mediation of social media in terms of how a new lexicon is coming to be, because, with short messaging.
Which I hate.
Yeah. So people, especially young people.
But it's a generational thing, isn't it?
Exactly. So the way people communicate these days, I find that sometimes when younger people send me messages, I have to ask somebody, a younger person close to me, what is this?
I always say, what language are you speaking?
Yeah, I mean, I do find that times, I don't find all swearing offensive. So it has to be done in a particular way.
In context.
But I do find that when people just swear to swear, there's some people who actually do that every other word is, effing this and effing that.
Yes.
You know, for me, it's
Yes.
unattractive. It's just, I just think your language must be limited. If you can't find another word
a limited
to
vocabulary.
express yourself. It is a profanity if somebody's offended by it. So I think you need to, if you want to swear, gauge your audience, and then don't do it amongst people who, because every time you're doing it, it's like you're sticking, you know, a knife into somebody's chest that cannot cope with it.
Is it about? I mean, most people will not swear in the workplace, for instance.
They do. No, but
then that's an organizational culture. I think that's an organizational culture. If the organizational culture is so relaxed that people get away with it, then they will get away with much more. But let me just go back to language. There was something I wanted to say that Emeka said. There's been tests that have been done that says if you teach children in their local language, they actually grow up more intelligent, because and that's what you were talking about education. So what is happening is English our first language? No, it isn't. Pidgin, more people speak Pidgin than they speak English in Nigeria. So is it that we need to now think about adopting Pidgin? My Pidgin is rubbish, but that doesn't matter. Is it that we need to think about adopting Pidgin as now, as a form of communication? Why not? I don't like it, but I'm just saying.
It's a symptom of carelessness. Whatever you adopt, people won't do it properly. They're just not, it's just the sense of you're not bothered to do things thoroughly. You know, because we find that a certain generation, after that, things are just shoddy.
I think after our generation, because I mean, after,
and it's not a sign of whether you schooled abroad or not.
All of that, better English. I remember the book, you know, that was how we learned English. Now you just hear all manner of things.
Well, I want to be an NTA broadcaster. I used to speak very nicely.
But you know the funny thing, maybe because I work a lot with plumbers, carpenters and all that, they are the latest generation of heavy swearers. And
in Nigeria?
Yes. I was standing with my father.
And it's always out of context.
Out of context. I was standing with my father and the plumber was trying to say that his boys had messed up. Anyway, maybe I can.
Yes, no, I know. I can imagine.
Like, I'm sorry, sir. Very respectful to my father, but I'm really sorry, sir. But these boys have effed me up.
Yes, that's common. I've heard that.
And then my father was just like, what? Then I stepped in quickly to
don't need to do that.
Well, I sort of anticipated some resistance on that one, but it didn't end up being as stiff as I thought it might be. Chuka screens the CVs of our political candidates after the break.